Hi, everyone, and welcome to Power of Parks, where we share inspiring stories from people who have benefited from nature, parks, and recreation. My guest today is Sandi Schwartz. She's a Palm Beach County resident and author of Finding Ecohappiness, Fun Nature Activities to Help Your Kids Feel Happier and Calmer. She's also a passionate environmentalist. She spent years working in the environmental field, and she's dedicated to helping others recognize the ways nature can help minimize stress and increase happiness. Welcome, Sandi.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell me how your interest in nature and the environment started.
Sure. Well, I've been a resident of Palm Beach County for about 15 years, but my interest in the environment goes back to 10th grade in New Jersey when I cleaned up a pretty polluted local river. And I was so shocked to see, I think we picked out like boots and tires, and it was pretty shocking for, a young person at the time. And so that really inspired me to get more involved in environmental issues. And I joined the high school nature defense club. And we did things like went around to the elementary schools and taught about recycling. And we did additional cleanups over the years. And so I actually then went on from that experience. I wrote my college essay on that cleanup. And my focused on both undergrad and graduate school in environmental policy. So it really became part of, everything that I was working for on a daily basis. I then had communications positions. So I thought I was going to be more on the science, but my math was a little weak. So I ended up being more communications at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the National Academy of Sciences, and also at an environmental and energy consulting firm where we worked a lot on Energy Star products, if you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. So, I really began this career in environmental communications. When we moved to Florida, I gave up the whole full-time rat race of the DC area and went off on my own as a freelance writer and blogger. And I honed in on environmental issues. And then, just really as part of my everyday life, as my hobbies and my daily routine, I really do prioritize the environment. I drive an electric car. I volunteer environmental organizations. I'm currently the newsletter editor for our Sierra Club chapter here in South Florida, our local area. And, I love organic products and even green my closet. I try to choose more, eco-friendly products. So it's really, who I am. It's the core of my passion.
So how did you feel seeing all that trash in your local river when you were younger?
Yeah, it's intimidating and disappointing, but it was rewarding to clean it up. And I also remember even at a younger age, I grew up in New Jersey, not too far from, remember the hypodermic needles on the Jersey Shore? I think that's in Billy Joel's song. So, that was just kind of part of the time in the 90s, 80s and 90s that we were seeing pollution with our own eyes, but people were finally starting to take action to do something about it. So I was pretty inspired to do something about it and enough to go to college for it. My major was environmental studies.
So fast forward to today, where did the inspiration for the Ecohappiness project come from?
Right. So sometimes life does take you on interesting paths. And the way I would describe it is two of the world, of my worlds were colliding, right? I had this interest in nature and the environment. And then I was also struggling personally with stress and anxiety. And it was actually something that I had always had. I can go back to being a little kid and being, nauseous before school in the morning and being nervous at parties and having, physical feelings and problems like even, where I was in college. But I didn't really get it, right? No one talked about it as much back then. And so for many years, I kind of struggled with this. And after I had my first child, I really kind of had postpartum anxiety, and it got, I felt pretty crummy, and it was like, what am I going to do now? And, the doctors want you to pop pills. And I just was like, let me research this a little bit before I medicate myself. So, I love, because I'm a writer and I love researching, I just started reading as much as I could. And it led me to the path of what's called positive psychology. So that's a whole discipline. It's kind of newer, where instead of just sitting around talking about your problems, you focus more on the positive aspects of your life and how that can enhance your everyday, how you deal with life in general. And so positive psychology has several tools, including things like mindfulness, gratitude, volunteerism, and also being in awe of things like nature. So I went down this path, and I started I was a freelance writer, and I was writing about these issues broadly. And about 2 years ago, I said, wait a second, like, why don't I merge these issues of nature environment with positive psychology and stress reduction? And that's where Ecohappiness Project was born. And although there's a lot of folks doing positive psychology research and writing out there, there's not that many focusing on nature. So that was sort of that niche I wanted to fill.
And what exactly is eco-happiness?
It's a word like I made up. Okay. I mean, I did see it, like someone else did write about it, but it was like an old blog. So eco-happiness is all about connecting to nature to feel happier and calmer. So it's really looking at, what we kind of know innately, and that like cultures for many thousands of years have done, but now the science is there to back it up. Like thousands of reports now have been coming out in the last couple of decades that really prove that being outside in nature, doing all kinds of activities, can help us feel more relaxed, boost our mood. So that is what like I'm honing in on and trying to kind of get the word out on it so that people will spend more time in nature. Because we also have this issue of technology, right? Kids are on screens so much, and we all are. And it's everyone wants to talk about balance. Well, sometimes it's just like, get out of your house and go for a walk. It's simple things. It could also be, I've written a lot about utilizing technology to connect to nature. You can even just watching like a flower bloom video on your screen as a break to your workday, like that itself can actually improve your mood, reduce your stress. So anyway, my book, I'm really excited because I've been writing about all this on my blog for years and articles and freelance, magazines and everything. And now I have my first book is coming out in March, and it's called Finding Eco-Happiness, Fun Nature Activities to Help Your Kids Feel Happier and Calmer.
So talk a little about your book. What's in it? What's it about?
Not only do I give the backgrounds of why nature calms us and how and the research, it's kind of like, research, but for the greater public. So it's nice to get that background. But each chapter then, goes into, I have a chapter on mindfulness. I have a chapter on creative arts. There's a chapter on food, which includes things like gardening, animals, which includes everything, from having pets to animal therapy to, going to the zoo and experiencing wildlife and bird watching. So yeah, I mean, the book is filled, and that's really, not only is it kind of giving the reason behind it, but, what can you do? And even though it's a parenting book, it's really for everybody. It can benefit all of us. So yeah, at the end of each chapter, there's a whole activity list, like a checklist that then you can go through and try out.
Yeah, so in all of your research, you point out that there's a science, to why nature has such a positive effect on us. Can you talk a little about that?
So the big piece of it is what's called biophilia, which is a theory, some kind of, wonky scientific theory. But, to really boil it down, it's that, we're animals in the end. Like we come from nature, we belong in nature, and we just feel we're more at ease in nature, and that's a lot. It's biological, it's genetic, it's where we came from. Mm-hmm. And, we've built all these human-made environments, and, all the studies show that, something like if you're biking on a stationary bike inside, staring at a blank wall versus maybe a stationary bike watching, with the window, looking at I've been on a cruise ship where you're like, on the bike, looking at the amazing ocean. Right. And then comparing, the third option would be going outside for a bike ride. So, with each step, you gain more of this peace, more of this calmness. And, the studies, show that they'll test cortisol levels and they'll see that, which of course indicates stress levels in folks. And that will go down as people spend more time outside in nature. There was a pretty big study that, it was groundbreaking. And I think it kind of shifted the discussion on this, because you'll notice like an uptick in media coverage. In 2019, the study that was published in Scientific Reports found that spending at least 120 minutes a week in nature, and it could be doing anything. You could be having a picnic or going for a bike ride, whatever. That's associated with good health and well-being. And so that got a lot of attention, and a lot of articles and ideas came from that specifically.
Now let's talk about the kids. What are some benefits that nature has on kids, especially now during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because, they've definitely had more tech time. Even when they go back to school, they're on their iPads more. I know last year, because some kids, like in order to do virtual learning, the kids who were even in the classroom had to be constantly on their iPads as well. So nature is just like a counterbalance to all that tech time. And I am definitely pro tech. Like, it's amazing what we can do with technology. I'm a blogger, right? Like if it wasn't for Facebook and Instagram and all these things, I wouldn't be able to get the word out about this. So I think that it's just necessary to realize that it's a balance, but to help balance tech and indoor life. But also it's interesting because, there's a whole movement, I'm involved with the Children in Nature Network, and they do a lot with getting, educating schools about taking the kids outside more, like besides just recess, which has been, cut over the years. But what about just getting kids outside for some outdoor classwork, whether it's science, a program or art, or just literally like, let's go read the book outside instead of in the stuffy classroom. Mm-hmm. And, during COVID, we know that it's healthier and better to just go outside. I know my kids were eating outside for lunch every day, so that was good instead of being stuck, indoors. It's something that's also really interesting. You asked about the benefits besides the stress reduction and boosting our mood and happiness. Being in nature also allows us to be more curious and creative. Mm. There's a big connection between outdoor time and creativity. And, I know that firsthand as a writer. Like if half of the things I write are while I'm on my walk or bike ride, like all of a sudden the ideas start coming in. Mm-hmm. So, and, you hear about authors who go away to the woods to write their greatest novels.
And so what sorts of activities would you recommend for kids to do in nature?
Yeah, well, and again, like my book is filled with it. So I did pull out a few from different chapters. So like in the outdoor play and adventure chapter, I talk about signing up for a family hiking challenge. There are a few websites that offer those. Going on a family nature walk. And of course, a lot of these, by the way, and I talk about going to your local park a lot. I just want to put in a plug for our local parks. Palm Beach County especially really is filled with so many, amazing parks. We live right next to Patch Reef Park. Okay. And so, since my kids were in a baby carriage, we would go over there and utilize that space. So, there's so much that you can do. Mm-hmm. And it can be in your backyard on a balcony, but, go head out to your local park too. You can try new types of green exercise as a family. So, exercise is great, but even better if you're outside. And there's some cool stuff like paddle boarding, mountain biking, and orienteering that not everyone, is doing every day that you could experience. Mm-hmm. I have a whole chapter on mindfulness. And so, you can go practice yoga outside, maybe sign up for a family yoga class at a local park or the beach. I think a lot of times they're doing yoga at the beach. Fortunately for us, we're near the beach as well. You can also, I don't know if you're familiar with forest bathing, but that's also this idea of like really immersing yourself in nature in the woods. And, we have some unique woods in Palm Beach County. When you really like take a look at the trees, they're just, sometimes it feels like I'm in Jurassic Park, the way the leaves look, it's not a traditional forest. And so you can really kind of enhance your mindfulness experience. And I talk a lot, I have a whole creative arts chapter too. So it talks about, you go out and you have these experiences and you might take pictures with your phone or higher end camera. And then what do you do with it? You can make collages, you can put together presentations using the computer, you can paint, you can draw, there's so much to let that experience, continue. And it's a mindful experience. And there's, more and more research on that too, like creativity and mindfulness and how that reduces stress as well.
And what about yourself? What sorts of experiences have you had outdoors in some PBC parks? I know you have some experience volunteering.
Yeah. So when I first moved down to Florida, we moved from Washington, D.C. area, and I knew nobody. And I was actually leaving behind a full-time job. And we moved down from my husband's job. And so what was I going to do? I had all this free time. I didn't have kids. It was like a really bizarre, time in my life. I had got my graduate degree and I had all this time. And I said, wow, I should really get out there. And I volunteered at Green K to be a tour guide. And, it wasn't easy. I had to study up. I went out and bought the birding book and I studied. And, to this day, when I see an ibis, I'm like, oh, I never, we don't have that up north. Yeah. So, I really enjoyed that experience. And my kids, then I had babies and all that. So there wasn't time to do that sort of thing. But we've gone back there as a family, and it's been fun telling my kids the stories, of that. And so, I recommend anyone in a new place, or even to see the place you've lived for many years from a different perspective, is to, try something new like that. And the volunteer work also adds, there's all the research of positive psychology of how that boosts our mood. So I've combining all these, aspects, hoping it super boosts.
Yeah.
To be as happy and calm as possible. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up that was really cool that we did since COVID. So in the last couple of years, we discovered the story walk at Spanish River Library. So they take a book and they blow up the pages, and then it's these different stations, and it's along a trail. And it was cool. The story was about bugs, and my daughter was 8 at the time, and she was so excited for this. She would run from one station to the next to find out what's going to happen. And these are, it's a national program now, where different libraries and communities are creating these story walks. And it's just a fabulous way to get families outside. And so they're reading, they're bonding, and they're hiking. They don't even realize you're hiking, but you are. And we were in a part of the woods back there that I had never been. And didn't realize how big it was. I've driven by a million times on military trail, but there was a lot of space back there. And when you're there, you feel like you're immersed in nature.
Awesome. So why do you think it's important for all of us to kind of recognize the healing powers of nature?
Yeah, well, that's a big question, right? And, I think my main reason, it's multifaceted. I want people to be happier and calmer, because I really do believe that we'll get along better. There'll be less problems like crime, and if people are happy, I don't think they're really stealing from other people. So, just recognizing that there is an easy way to feel better. The other really underlying issue that's sort of that broader, take me back to my roots, is that I really believe if people recognize how nature helps them feel better, that they will want to protect it. And, if they wouldn't want their park to go away, once they realize all the joy it brings their families. So, in the conclusion of my book, that's where I land. I say this is, it's a little bit of an anthropocentric, focus. Well, it's good for us, so let's protect it. But we're facing multiple issues now with climate change and overdevelopment, and and plastic in our oceans. So, whatever it takes to get people energized and out there to do something, I really think this is a new way to look at things. And anything that makes us happy, like, wouldn't we want to protect that?
Yeah. So anything else you'd like to mention?
I do. I want to invite everyone to head over to my website, ecohappinessproject.com. It's filled with resources, blog posts, articles, but also I have something really cool, and it's right on the homepage there. And this goes back to like what activities, should you do with your kids? And this is a free nature habit quiz. It's 10 questions and you go through it. The kids can answer it. You can answer it for your kids, for each kid. And at the end, you'll get an email that explains like, what are the best nature related activities for your kid based on their interests. And then you'll get a whole list of ideas for activities. And, if you have an artsy kid or you have a more athletic kid, you'll be able to get this kind of catered response. And so go over to ecohappinessproject.com and take the quiz.
And your book is coming out in 2022, right?
It's coming out, kind of cool date, March 22nd, which is exactly 1 month before Earth Day. So I'll be quite busy the months of March and April.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. This has been great. And check out the book when it's available, of course.